Hello and welcome to Safe Investing. I'm Govindraj Ethiraj. As we continue our journey speaking to well-known and legendary investors on how they invest and their philosophy of investing, in this case, in the context of markets like India. I'm most pleased and delighted to welcome today Samir Arora, founder of Helios Capital Management, someone who's been actively investing in India for more than 25 years in many avatars, from mutual funds to now more of a long short fund, as he calls it. But nevertheless, someone who's observed not just the markets, but also businesses from fairly close proximity. Samir, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. And thank you,
So,
Govind, for
Samir,
inviting me.
thank you. So, Samir, first question, and this is it's a in a way a broad brush question. What is your investment or investing philosophy?
So first of all, we are talking about equity markets per se only because I'm an equity investor and not a debt plus equity investor. So in equity investing, the big picture philosophy generally has been that you find good because the opportunity in the marketplace is to buy a few shares or even a small weightage in shares and then ride the benefits of the growth of that company. Now, there are many ways you can invest. You could invest in bad companies and hope that they will become good. There are many people who, not in India so much, but in the world, will do activist investing or they will buy very cheap stocks and hope that they will turn around. Or you buy what we do, which is normally called growth investing, which means that when we buy shares, we are riding off the efforts of the company. Our job is only to choose between those companies rather than say that then we will add some more value, which, for example, some PE funds may do, who, after buying a stock, will advise the company, tell them how to change boards and auditors and all that. We are basically saying find the best companies, buy them, and then let them do all the hard work.
Right. So now, having said that, what's your next layer of filters? How would you identify the companies? Are you usually driven by sectors and industries, and how do those change when times change?
So what happened is that over the years, I realized that it is very, very difficult to find what you call good companies. Because a good company, let us say, is defined as being in a good sector, good management, good history, good corporate governance, good accounting, let's say, and then good valuations. And the problem in markets is that there is no definition of good. So, for example, by the time you say that, say, the management of HDFC Bank is good, it will take you 10 years of that company doing well for you to feel ki, yes, this company is got good management. And even then, you don't know whether it is good management or good one guy or whatever. So, over the years, we've realized that it is easier to say what is bad and not buy it. So if you put in a market where we find that, say, in a market with 100 stocks, broadly we figure out in India and in the US that about 30 to 35 stocks do 30 to 35% of the stocks do very, very well each year. And how to come to that number is we are all comparing ourselves with the market average or the market or benchmark or it's a index, and the index return is broadly an average of those, say, 100 stocks. So, broadly, plus minus a little bit, around half the stocks will beat the market and half will be beaten by the market. Sometimes this number will be less because, say, a large company goes up, say, Reliance in India or Amazon in US, then it tilts the index performance so that even fewer stocks have to go up for that market to be up, whatever it is. So we find that if half have to beat and half have to be beaten for the market to be as defined, one third really beat by a massive margin, which means you start with your universe and reject as many stocks as you want because rejecting stocks is easier than saying what is good. For example, we know that if an employee steals money, he's bad. But if he doesn't steal money, is he good? No definition. If a person does not, if he harasses people on the job or he harasses women, he's bad. You can't say I'm a good employee because I don't harass women. So, in the same way, with very high, so what we say is take your 100 stock, whatever be your market, remove stocks because they have very, very clearly bad valuations or clearly bad sectors which means could be very much government policy driven, very global. Remove clearly, say, leverage companies. Remove clearly bad management history companies, which everybody knows are broadly bad. And once in a while, they may turn out to be better also, but at your level. And then you remove everything, you'll be left with about half the market. This is without knowing anything other than reading, and you don't. And then if you will be left with 10 private sector banks, say 5 pharma companies, say some, then you select within them. This is, we are talking from a purely retail point of view. But instead of going in and say, I know this company is very good, because you don't know. And by the time you know, it may still do well for some more years. But most of the juice has been taken out, because by the time you became comfortable that it is very good, many years would have passed.
So what's the time horizon that you usually look at for your own funds or in general?
So the idea is that we find that although people say that stocks do well when held for the very long term, the reality is that when you buy 10 stocks, only 3 will be worth holding for the very long term. You can't go in saying that I will buy these 10 stocks straight away for the long term. Because as I said, by the time you get confidence that now these are the stocks for the long term, actually the story is over. So my favorite example for that is that Warren Buffett bought Coke, and he drinks Coke every day at his AGMs and all that. But actually Pepsi has outperformed Coke since the day he bought it. And there are many examples like that you feel you got the best stock, but actually you haven't. So what we are saying is, you buy stocks initially with a 1 to 3 year horizon, and if that company is doing well, obviously you will keep it. But let's look at Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. So we know that Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has basically made all his money in 4 or 5 stocks: Titan, some Lupin, some Crisil, maybe, I don't remember, but let's say 2, 3 more. But it's not that he's bought 5 stocks. He would have bought maybe 80 stocks in his life. And then some XYZ didn't work, then TV18 didn't work, some other one didn't work. And what worked, he kept. So that is what we mean. Rather than saying that I bought only 5 stocks because I believe in them so much. I have one more favorite story on this. That when Steve Jobs died, he died in 2011 sometime, middle of 11. At that time, 80% of his net worth was in Walt Disney and 20% only in Apple shares, because he had got Walt Disney shares for selling Pixar to Disney. Now, why didn't he know that in 10 years Apple is going to be the biggest company in the world? Why didn't he know it? Why didn't Bill Gates know that I have hired Satya Nadella, maybe when he hired in beginning, and now I was the founder, so I know when Satya Nadella comes, he will do such good things, and Microsoft will suddenly become he sold all his shares. Bill Gates is not even having, I think, 5-10 billion of shares in Microsoft out of his 100 billion or 120 billion net worth, because he sold it all off. So point being, even an insider doesn't know that 10 years may what will happen. So you buy, as I said, first, if you broadly accept that a large number of stocks do well, a large number being according to us 1/3, try and eliminate as many as you can by going the reverse way, by just saying blatantly, we know this history of this fellow, or we know that the sector is very bad, or it's very government policy driven, or it is very global, so I won't be able to, I or anybody else will not be able to handle it. You'll be left with half only. From that half, you have to go to 1/3 is much easier than going from 1 to anything in 1/3. That is the
I'm
way
going to
I
come
think
back to
for
the
everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to the filters in a second. But so when you talked about the 1, 2, and 3 years, so I'm assuming that also means that there is nothing, particularly when you're a fund, or even for that matter, if you're an individual investor, there is nothing like a long term, because a long term is
No,
something.
no, long term is there. The long term will be because when you bought it, it continued to do well, so you kept it for long. Like I have owned HDFC Bank for more than 24 years. My story has come in a book called Bank for the Buck, written by Tamal Bandhopadhyay. But when I bought it in 1996 or 95, in the 96, I think IPO happened, I didn't know that this is going to be turning out to be but when every year it did well, why would I sell it? Similarly, look at the other way around. So we bought Bajaj Finance in January 2011. Why would anybody think that this is the company which is going to go up 70 times? But you bought it saying, okay, it's worth 2-3% of your portfolio because the management is good, Bajaj family is good. This new guy who's joined them at that time is good, Rajiv Jain. If you think Rajiv Jain knew that this stock will become a 35 billion market cap company, he would not have joined that company saying, I want 20% stake first or something like that. So the point is not that you don't stay for the long term. I'm saying it is highly unlikely that you will directly be able to buy a stock for the long term. So don't put that standard on yourself, because then you will wait for too much confirmation before you will
Right.
buy. And that would mean that you will miss two things. The fact that a large number of stocks do well, and those guys also don't know that they're going to do well, except that they are in good sectors, good history, they are trying to make a serious job of it, and so you'll buy too late. Basically, that's what it means. If you keep waiting for that highest conviction to say that I will hold it forever. And secondly, we have seen that companies you can't hold for 20 years. If you look at the other holdings of Mr. Buffett, because the advantage of analyzing him is not to say that we are like him, but because his data is available for 25 years, you can see what he held and not held, at least in the top names. So he owned Wells Fargo since some 90s. And in this year, it's down 55%. So whatever he may have made got blown up in 1 year, and maybe in between also. So the point is, you will never know beyond a point. So long term is very much there. But long term will be, you will buy 10 stocks, 3 will become long term. Something like that.
Right. But
and
so
rest
you're
will
saying
still
that
give you good money. Rest will still make you good money, because a lot of shares go up for 5-6 years and then they either plateau out or even blow up. We made nearly 50 times on Pantaloon, and now Pantaloon is bankrupt. But when we were buying Pantaloon, we were not speculating. At that time, it was a fair new retail. In 2001, I think we bought it, 2002 in Alliance days. And then we bought it in the new Helios days. And then after some years, I think in 8, we sold it off. So we may have made 30 in the end because it went up 50 and then fell. But so you can't say in 2001 that in 21 it will be doing badly. So, because you never know.
So if you were to now look at a basket of, let's say, 10 stocks today, what would be your, I mean, I'm coming back to my first question, and I think you have articulated, but I'm just trying to get maybe a slightly more an insight that comes in from a slightly different angle.
I've suddenly thought of a different way.
Yeah. So how would you select those 10 today? And suppose you said that, okay, here are the 3 things that I will which will be my positive filters, and here are my 3 things that will be my negative filters.
Correct. Okay. So first thing is how to mentally think of stocks in terms of whether to buy or not buy. So we think there are 2 ways you can mentally, in a mental model, put it. One is high confidence in reasonable return. That means the confidence is high, but the return will be low. And the second is reasonable confidence in high return. We are too old, too experienced to say high confidence in high return. There is no such category. So let's say high confidence in reasonable return would mean that the company is doing well, but everybody knows about it now. It is a big part of the market, but it is reasonably valued based on historical numbers and its growth and all that. The management generally has been good and will keep you out of trouble. And if the market is doing well, they will do well. If the market is doing badly, maybe they'll outperform. So today's context, these stocks will be these private sector banks. It could be a few multinationals. It could be these consumer names. It could be the tech names, which are like TCS or HDFC Bank, those kind of obvious names. But those obvious names also you are choosing out of, let's say, 50 names, because there'll be other names which you can easily ignore. Commodity companies, highly leveraged companies, infrastructure companies, state-owned companies, broadly they will not work. So there is still value in choosing 10 out of, say, 30, 40 or 50 large companies. And there the rejection can be on sectors that are clearly in stress, or where the government policy is a big part, or there is whatever. Then you are doing the other group where you say reasonable confidence in high return, which means you found everything okay. And what were those okay? We had 7 factors. Good industry, good management. But we don't know good, so we will say not bad. That means you didn't find anything bad in them. So, but I don't. So let's not say good. So industry, management, accounting, which some of retail may or may not know as much, but at least there should not be stories every day that there is bad. Medium term triggers, valuations, and now we put a new one called like if you are not what is the word, disrupted. So whether your sector can be disrupted or not. Now with this, I am not trying to find the good company, because even today we don't know what is good management if you meet a new management. See, we can say TCS is good management, but that poor guys have been working hard for 20 years. So now we can say good management. But if I were to meet a new company, some company which is benefiting from China plus one strategy or CRAM strategy, all these guys are the future. Some of them will be future winners. But today, how will I call them good? All I can say, yeah, he looks educated, he's got some training, the theme is good. He's not bad. There is no history of bad. That generally whatever they've done for 4 or 5 years is good, and the theme is powerful. So I will buy 2%. In the first one, I may buy 5-6% of my portfolio. Then I buy in the second group what we call reasonable confidence in high return. There should be no factor on which it is bad. It may not be good. First of all, it should not be bad on any factor. Then, when you say it is not bad, that mostly for many people anyway means it is good. And then you buy a smaller stake and you rely on serendipity of the market, that a large number of stocks do well, which is one third. So in that mix, you will find some stocks which will fall off after some time. They will break even, some will drop, and some will do very well. Another thing for first starting with a smaller position is that when good news comes out, you are willing to add because you say it is my stock. Suppose I've been looking at a stock which I say is very good, but I need to wait one more year when I will be really convinced. By that time, in that year, it goes up 40%. I will never buy. I'll say I thought of it when it was 200. I knew it is good, but I didn't buy it till 300. I can't buy it become 400. But if I bought a little bit at 200, it goes to 300. It is my stock. I've also done well in it. Easier to average. Because when the day you start analyzing, for whatever reason, that price will become your price. That I saw it at 200, how can I buy it at 400, even though it might be going to 600? But if you have it, so therefore we say, just eliminate the bad. That is a massive improvement over the market. And then
so,
you choose
at a time. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm saying after that, you try and choose how you can reduce it a bit further. If you, after this first exercise, find that there are still too many names left, we find that basically 50% is left. And some stock you are not saying I will never buy. You are saying I will not buy for now. So for example, for 5-6 years, there was massive fight in the telecom industry between Bharti and these new guys and the old guys. So what was the need to buy Bharti? We didn't buy it for 6 years. We said, no, we'll look at it when it ends. Although after that also not done well. But at least those 6 years, but we have it now. So I'm saying in those 6 years, we said, no, it's too complicated. There's too much going on. Why to analyze? So like today we say that for fertilizer industry, for road building, government doesn't have money. Why are you telling me that you got an order? There's nobody in the country who will give you money on time when you do make the road. So we said, just remove for the moment. It might be forever, but for the moment, we are saying for the moment. You remove all these, you will anyway be left with a more reasonable this thing. And there, if you make a mistake, that mistake will be less costly. It will not be somebody will go bankrupt. You may underperform because something goes wrong again. But some things will go wrong in between for many of the stocks that are owned. But the idea is that you should not completely lose everything because one or two stocks did badly, because they will.
Right. So at a time like this, and of course this could be at many times, the market is very bullish. Some may argue that the market and the economy are a little out of sync, but that also happens very often, and it has happened in history. So how do you then pick stocks? So then do you revert to sort of looking at what the economy and the macroeconomic signals are, or do you stick to the stocks?
No, basically you have to stick a little bit to the economy if those stocks are dependent on the economy. For example, why are we not buying any infra stock now, which we used to own, including the biggest obvious ones, is because we know that the government has no money. So how can anybody get paid? And how this country we don't have. I mean, in India, the corporate sector today does not have the confidence to do capex. So why are you recommending all these heavy engineering type companies to me when nobody has money? So you have to look at the economy. So the way we have reconciled it right now is to say that the economy is like a K, is experiencing a K curve or whatever you call it, where some groups of sectors are going up and some are going down and some are sort of hanging around. But mostly the disparity between groups is going up because whatever was happening pre-COVID has got accentuated with COVID. So if there was previously X% people going online every year, now for the next 4 year number has gone online now. And then similarly on the other side, if you were slowly getting disrupted because of having say Netflix, now that has got accelerated. So because of that, I by the way don't feel that randomly stocks are going up. It looks that the market is up because we are looking at it from March. You look at it from December because December was pre-COVID. And now COVID is about to end. So in that the market is down some 3, 4, 5%. And many stocks are down 20, 30%, which have either a shorter term problem, like say some of these strong banks, or they seriously have a threat of disruption. And the stocks that are up are actually stocks which are not necessarily greatly benefiting, but have been greatly protected, like the tech sector, pharma, Reliance, many of these consumer companies, they're up, some are up a lot. Basically, the pure beneficiaries, and the ones which have not been badly hit are like flattish. And the stocks which have a shorter term problem and a longer term problem are down 30, 40%. It's not, everything has not gone up. Everything has gone up.
Right. So if I were to now, let me ask you about the mistakes that you've made, or the one or two mistakes that you've made and that you've really learned from, and which obviously you would like to share.
No. So we have made so many mistakes that we say we tell our new investors that we have made mistakes on account of the previous investors because we made those mistakes 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. And from every mistake you are learning. But if I were to summarize them, the summary has been that the maximum money has been lost in sectors where there was a connection with the government. Basically, maximum money has been lost in infrastructure projects. And we bought many of them in our life because in the 2004-5 era and even previously, you would buy companies on the basis that India is behind the world on infra, that if you privatize Delhi airport, you'll make a lot of money, that if you get a lot of road orders, you are in business. And every one of them we have lost. And actually, if you look at all the bankrupt guys, all of them have lost because of becoming bullish on infra. All of them. Their first project may have been successful, but then they goofed up because they tried to buy it one more time. Whether you look at GMR or GVK or JPA or Unit, in some conceptual sense, everything was related to government being a client, I would say. And we have had a big share in that. Other than that, you don't broadly blow up in those shares. You lose some or you underperform. So now we are not buying any infra because there is neither the confidence in the corporate sector to be, because you need a successful winner,
right,
for others to copy. So for example, when in 2004-5 this Jindal Steel and Power, these guys did very well. They had some 1000 megawatt of power, which was free pricing or whatever, and they made little bit of, they were a small company in that sense, but they made a lot of money. Some billions of dollars of power investment went in and they all blew up. Similarly, it happened with telecom. Initially, Bharti and all made money, some 20 guys land up. So right now you need that first guy also we don't have in this world. So that would be an easy one to explain. Otherwise, individually we've made many. Our Amitabh Bachchan Corporation went to zero. There have been many which have gone to not zero because that was unlisted, so we couldn't do anything. But to lose 50%, we would have done, at least 10 times in our life.
Right. So, and it's interesting because you're putting the blame, or not blame, but you're saying that an external factor, which is government policy in this case, is more
No,
to
no, no,
blame
not
rather than an
policy,
internal
not
factor,
policy, not policy. You
or
could say
government's
that
inability to.
not every government with the system. So, for example, if a road is ready but it is stuck because some guy has appealed to the government or in a court, or say in these power projects, these guys bid very aggressive. Who's this guy knocking at my door? Anyway, so if the power guy was very aggressive in bidding for his power, or in this airport guys, some airport you didn't get the land or something happened. So it need not be that the government, central government is doing it. I mean the system. Let's call it the system where you need help from a court or help from some lender or help from some state government. Basically, it has not turned up. It has
Right.
not turned up for all these guys. And at some conceptual level, even look at Z. The reason why the stock is down because they that SL infra. So it's again infra.
Infrastructure.
Everything effectively some level of infra. Now you call it whoever fault. It's not a policy fault as much. It could be that you didn't get land and nobody's willing to get you that last piece of land. It has happened in many companies. For example, this toll road in Delhi, the toll road was ready. Then they said, sorry, the big queues, take away the bloody toll road from him. So there's so many of these. I mean, it's not external. That is what we were supposed to have analyzed. That this ain't so easy. It is
Right.
as much an analyst's fault.
Right. So, last question, or last but one. When you look ahead now, you mentioned the example of HDFC Bank, and many of your peers have quoted HDFC Bank. Maybe also because you've all started
Everybody has it.
investing around the same time. So, could one find a stock like that today? I mean, do you think all
But just
these?
before that, their name is not in the book, so don't agree with them totally. Only their name is not in the HDFC Bank book. So maybe they
Yeah.
were 1 year behind me. Can you find? No, you will find, but you will not know then. I have found many. But later on, you turn out, what a great gold mine we bought. Every year it will go up 20% or so, and you'll be happy. But when the same 20% becomes over 10, 20 years, it becomes a massive multi bagger. So I'm sure we have. But we say we will dare not say today straight away because of the number of companies that end up doing badly after having started well, that if it is continuing to do well, we are there. But let us not say publicly too much about any one company, because what happens is you become a prisoner of that associate. Not necessarily that SEBI will come, but if I tell every day this is the new, and tomorrow something goes wrong, I don't want to have any psychological this thing that I
Right.
can't sell it because I was so public. But broadly, the themes that make money in the long run are basically these three, four themes, which is financials, consumer, and technology, pharmaceutical, retail type. If you look, it's very easy. Look at the Forbes billionaires list and see where those billionaires are coming from. They will come from these sectors. They will not come from commodity sector, cement sector, steel sector. There'll be some one billionaire out of 400 who went into and bought steel or something. Basically, they'll be from finance, consumer, tech, pharma, and somebody might be doing a little bit, something different, but broadly. So these are the sectors where
Yeah.
long-term wealth has been created.
Right. So now, last question, and again to pick up on the two examples you gave, HDFC Bank and Bajaj Finance. Now, these companies internally are different. I mean, and you pointed it out yourself. One is clearly a promoter, family-owned business. The other is completely and truly professional and was set up from scratch by the professional. So, when you look back, is there any trend in the success stories, or for that matter, the failures, in terms of who they were or where they came from?
So I think that large insider owner like a whatever you call promoter is not such a bad idea. I don't think it is true that it should be professionally run, because we have seen professionally run companies basically being totally taken advantage of by the management.
Hmm.
I will privately and separately tell you and prove to you how some of these largest companies basically are the private fiefdom of these guys. One of them has recently retired, and all these guys, by just looking at their fact that the employees own 15% of a company and 20% of a company, you know that's if the government is there and there's nobody else. So there is no. It's actually not a bad mix to have a initially the promoter because the son is starting or somebody starting, and then maybe he has a CEO, or even if he's on his own, like Kotak Bank. What would you say? Basically, the promoter has been running it, and now we are not happy that RBI is saying change the CEO because the guy is 55, 60 years old. Why should he retire? But so I don't think there has been this thing that family-driven businesses are bad. Reliance, such a great return for investors, some 18% per annum for 30 years. So I know that I don't think has been a big negative.
Right. So anyway, if I heard you right, you're saying that you're leaning towards more promoter run companies or family
I'm saying
companies?
there has not been any negative necessarily because you're promoter driven.
Right.
In fact, every new company mostly is promoter driven because the promoter has started it and come to you. There are very, very few companies which could be called managed whatever driven or publicly held from day one. Unless it is a subsidiary of some existing state-owned company. How will you start from scratch with a completely management-driven company? It will not be. It will mostly be somebody owning a large stake and then over time diluting to the market.
Right. So, Samit, I'm tempted to add one more question. So, I've asked you about the analytical approach, right? Among other things, and you've been a fund manager, active fund manager sitting right here in Mumbai. You also require something else. You need maybe a calm mind, an ability to disconnect. What would you say is your biggest asset or strength in that department?
First of all, you have to be able to handle losses. Like in 2008, you should be able to still sleep peacefully and get up peacefully. But the other thing to which I attribute, because my performance is a bit different from the guys here, is because I read a lot. Or maybe others also read, but I feel that has been massively helpful to me. And one more thing that has helped is to think in terms of what is happening in the US. It does not matter whether the same thing happens here or not. But if it happens there, in India, the stock stops going up. So, for example, ESG. Now, we may not care about ESG here, but if you see for the last 3 years, Indian oil companies, Indian coal companies, Indian aluminum, none of them are working because the global guys are against these companies. Today, for example, I believe that in US, the auto industry is going to get disrupted because these driverless cars are coming. They have already started and they are hugely, hugely beneficial for the public because the car gets used full time, otherwise private owner is owning for 3-5%, parking, so much space across the cities in New York and all will be saved. Thirdly, you will get say 45 minutes saving each side for the US current. So in US it'll get disrupted. It doesn't matter whether in India it gets disrupted because we have gaddas and we don't have anything. But if it doesn't do well there, because then if it really becomes like that, then the buyer will be a bulk buyer. It will be another business. It will not be a car selling to retail. So it will become even more difficult. And you can see it in their market caps. Tesla's market cap, it will get also disrupted on electric. Nothing has to happen in India. But the stock has gone. If it works there. Even if it takes 15 years later to come here. So these connections, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I think that they have helped me to position that which sectors I like and not like by seeing what is happening in the rest of the world. And
Samir Arora, thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing your thoughts and insights, and indeed built on a foundation of literally wealth of experience over many, many decades. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.